Okay, tonight's presentation is about the ET3AA club station in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. This presentation is really centered around the IARU contest from this past year. So what I thought I would do is just start off with a short history of the club station. It's kind of interesting. It was established in 1993. The father of the organization, and I think father is the appropriate term in this case, was Sid May ET3SID. Since it was established, it's been moved around to a couple of different schools in the city, and now it's currently located at the Addis Ababa University Institute of Technology, and that's its current home. They had a big inauguration in May 30th of 2011 with some local dignitaries. They even got a little bit of TV coverage, which was good for the university, good for the club, and then in June 2011, the EARS, Ethiopian Amateur Radio Society, was established, and that actually was the designation we used in the IARU contest this past year. I believe, as most of you know, Sid passed away. This next line here is an email I got from one of the students, Get To, and when I saw the subject line, my heart just kind of sank. We knew Sid's health was somewhat failing, but we didn't quite expect it to happen just yet. But anyways, I opened up the email. It said, "I'm deeply in sorrow to tell you that Sid May has passed away Tuesday morning, 25 September 2012, and that came from Get To. This guy had a major impact on those kids there for many years, and as I said, he really was a father figure to many of them, and it was a big loss to the students, to the university, and to amateur radio. The guy had a huge impact on the kids there. So anyways, the good news is that he left a great legacy. The station's alive, active, thanks to a number of the students listed here. They still are the primary people in the club keeping things going. And it's 20 or so active students right now. Actually, I think that number may be a little bit higher. And most of them, the students are studying electrical, mechanical, and civil engineering. So here's a picture of Sid, ET3SID. Here's another one. I believe that's at his home station. He had the club station, then he also had a station at home where he used his own call sign. And then finally, I wish this picture was a little bit better. I had some with him of the kids, and I wasn't able to find them, so I had to pull this off the web. But on the left is Sage, then you see Sid, Adula, and Get To. Some of the more prominent students in the club station, but it's kind of a nice picture of them with Sid. So in December of 2011, there was a group of people that visited the station led by Dave K3LP, and here you see a picture of their team and the people that were part of that operation there. And it was kind of a joint thing. I mean, the main purpose, of course, was to help the station and do some work there and get the kids on the air and fix up the club station. And they also took some license exams, which you'll see in a minute. But they also had a chance to get on the air and make some contacts, which I know many people appreciated. One of the things they did was brought along a bunch of equipment. Here's a list of it, and it's really was a great donation for the club. A lot of that stuff is in use, as you'll see, and it helped them immensely because there really wasn't any funding for the club from the university. It was pretty much based on donations or whatever Sid could scrape together, and that's pretty hard to do in a place like Ethiopia. So this donation was a fantastic boost for the club, and the guys did a great job. As I mentioned, one of the things they did for the students was held a testing session for their U.S. licenses. Sadly, and we'll get into this a little bit more later in the presentation, they are not able to get their own ET3 call sign. ET3 license. But they held the exam session. As you see, total number of exams 163, and 57 people successfully passed at least one level. And then the final numbers, there was 16 technician license issued, 36 general, and 5 of them even made the extra class license, and I believe Sid was one of those. So great visit by that group. They did a tremendous job there, and really a big boost to the club. And I know Dave has done a number of presentations on that, and it was a big hit. I know the students still talk about that today. Okay, a little bit about my travels to Africa. Why am I going there? What am I doing? I'm not working for the CIA. I'm not chasing poachers in the jungle. I'm not chasing Joseph Kony. What I wound up doing, I think it was a little over 2 years ago, the Voice of America has been interested in expanding their FM radio network in Africa. As most of you probably know, shortwave is starting to fall by the wayside. The other platform, the new media that just hasn't taken hold yet in Africa, the cell mobile networks are pretty good in the capital city, but most of the people just have basic phones, and any sort of texting or video service either isn't available or it's too expensive for them. So the FM radio is a great platform, and in many of these countries, BBC, Radio France International, the Chinese, and everyone else are there, and the VOA is not yet. So they've been pushing to expand their network. So what I wind up doing is going out on surveys, technical surveys, looking for places to host the station, doing the technical survey, seeing what kind of equipment's needed. Often I will meet with the embassy staff, the ambassador, brief them on what's happening, and it's usually about a week-long trip just to go through all of that stuff. Ethiopian Airlines is one of the major carriers in Africa, especially East Africa. You can see their route map there, and that's one of the reasons I've been going through Addis, is just because of the Ethiopian network. It allows me to get to a lot of these places reliably. And for anyone that's done any traveling, you know it's not always a lot of fun, and if you can get a little bit of status on any of the carriers or the alliances, in this case Star Alliance, it helps immensely. So that's one of the other reasons I was glad to see about a year or so ago Ethiopian Airlines became part of the Star Alliance, along with United, Lufthansa, Thai, and some of the other big carriers, and that became a big help. Typically, my travels will take me from Washington to Frankfurt, Germany, where I pick up the Lufthansa flight to Addis Ababa. Certain days of the week, that flight stops in Khartoum, and also the same thing coming back. LH598, the return flight is very easy to remember. It's Lufthansa 599, so that's always an easy one to remember. Here's a list of some of the countries I've visited over approximately the last 2 years. It all started actually with Bangui in the Central African Republic. We needed someone to go out and do a survey, and I guess they had asked around, and no one really wanted to touch that one, and they came to me, and I said, yeah, that's fine, I'll do it. Having spent a lot of time in Africa and other places overseas, I thought, you know, that's fine. My philosophy is I can pretty much go anywhere as long as I've got a return ticket. You know, if it's a week or 2 or 3, that's fine, and if they're not shooting at me, I'm okay with it. So, but anyways, based off the success of that one, I started getting dragged into a few more. Juba, South Sudan is actually the only place I really operated from. Z81Z. I did get a chance in Mauritania to meet with 5 Tango 0 Japan Lima, a very interesting fellow. You know, typically if I'm there for a week, and it may be only a one-time visit, it's just difficult to get a license in that amount of time. It takes time, and then to drag equipment along and everything, it just gets to be a lot of work. So I've not bothered in most cases to try to get a license. Although one of the other things I do on these trips is I'm quite often meeting with host government officials regarding regulatory issues for broadcasting or getting a license. And so it does open up a bit of an avenue to ask about a ham license. And I try not to mix that with business too much, but if the occasion presents itself, I will ask, and typically the answer is the 3 words you like to hear in Africa: it is possible. So, you know, I'll at least inquire about it, and if I know I'm coming back at some point, I may consider it. As a matter of fact, I just got back Monday afternoon from Dakar and Bujumbura, and my first trip to 9U, I'd asked about a license, and they said, yeah, no problem. Here are the forms, and when I started looking at the cost of it, I just kind of backed away from it. Okay, here's one of the entrances to the Institute of Technology. And so what you do is you go up 4 flights of stairs, no elevator. It's good exercise, especially if you're carrying a bunch of equipment or an amplifier or something like that. That's usually when I get my cell phone and call the kids and say, hey, I'm down at the front door, come down here and help me. And then you go up the spiral staircase to the top. I typically try to bring stuff along on these trips for the kids. I mentioned before some of the perks of having status on these airline alliances with the Star Alliance between United and Lufthansa. I can take 3 bags up to 70 pounds each, and trust me, I have used just about every pound on those several times my trips in there. In this case, I just filled up a duffel bag full of a bunch of tools. I went to Home Depot and found some stuff that they had on sale and threw it in a bag, and there's a radio there that came along. It's, you know, whatever they need, I'd try to stock up on some stuff and bring it along. But it doesn't take too long to get a roll of coax or something in your suitcase, and I've got to pack clothes if I'm out for a week or two, and it doesn't take long, and the bags are getting pretty full and getting pretty heavy. Okay, here's a look at the station itself. The way things were set up on that desk there really was not conducive to efficient operating. It wasn't. It was kind of hard to use. There wasn't a lot of room to operate the radio. They were doing paper logs. It just became not a real pleasant setup for the radio, and I kind of had that in the back of my mind. And then Carl Renz, the K4YT, was over there earlier this year, and when he got back, he said, boy, you know, that's just not a very good setup, the way all that equipment is on there, and it's hard to use. And I said, yeah, I agree with you. And I just, at that point, I thought, you know, we're gonna have to change that, get him a desk, and try to make the station a little bit easier to use. So this particular trip was during May of this year, about a month before the IARU contest. I was passing through for work, so I stopped in there. We did some maintenance to the station, and then talked about the contest in June and me coming back, and they were all for it. They were pretty excited to do the contest. So this trip in May was more just to get things in order, clean up the station a little bit. Okay, here you see the Meritron solid-state amplifier. I bought the module to put the thing on 10 and 12 meters. And of course, since most of these kids are electrical engineering students, I said, here are the instructions, here are the parts, go at it. If you got any questions, ask me. So Sergey is the one with the screwdriver, Getu's in the middle, and then Daggy's the one that's holding the little module that's going to go in the amplifier. So we put them to work. This is a pretty easy thing to do. Okay, so we got most of the equipment moved over to the desk. The other nice thing is the university had given them I guess you call it a new computer. It was much better than what they had before, but they had pretty good speed, internet connection. So we were able to hook that computer up to the radio and get some computer logging going. And they were moving ahead here with a much cleaner, neater operating position. And here's a shot from the back. Getu's checking things out. And if you can see this little hub here, the other thing I did is I brought this hub along, which allowed them to plug in a couple extra headphones. I brought a few other pairs of headphones so that if someone was operating, especially for the contest, since they had never really done a contest before, they could listen in and just get a sense of what was happening. Okay, this is Getu, very interesting kid. When I was there in May, after we kind of got the station set up on the desk, he said, you know, Ken, I've been reading about wire antennas and I think I'd like to build one. I said, hey, that's fantastic. You know, tell me, what do you want to do? So he was showing me in the book and showed me a dipole antenna. He knew the formulas for calculating the length of it. And I said, okay, well, let's do this. Why don't you go ahead and build it? And then we'll put it up and I'll show you how to tune it, and let's see what happens. So he did that. And we purposely cut it a little bit long. I explained the rationale for doing that, and then I showed him how to take SWR readings, and it did confirm that was a little bit too long, so we cut some off both ends, and I think after 2 tries we were pretty much where we wanted to be at 7100 kilohertz. And then he started tuning around, and he picked up a broadcast station from somewhere, and his face just lit up, thinking, wow, you know, I took this piece of wire and piece of coax and I can just pull this signal out of the ether, and it's really, this is really cool. And, you know, the joy we all had when we first got started and did something like that too. You could just see on his face that he was pretty excited about it. So, of course, he wanted to make a contact on this antenna, and it's maybe 3, 4 in the afternoon. We're in East Africa, and he starts calling CQ, and I thought, oh, my gosh, this isn't going to work. I mean, there's no one around for miles or kilometers that is going to hear him, that he's going to be able to work. And, of course, he didn't get any answers. So I explained some of the propagation of 40 meters and suggested he was going to have to try to come back some night when it was dark in Addis and maybe dark in Europe or so. And he did that and actually did make a couple of contacts with it. And so that was pretty exciting to him to be able to build that antenna and to work some people with it. This is a picture inside the university. Again, when I was there in May, I saw this and I thought, what in the world is all this trash on the floor? Well, it just so happened that it was final exams for the end of the year. And the custom there is that once you finish your exams, you take all your class notes and tear them up and throw them in the air like confetti. So that's what that was. And just about every hall, every stairway was littered like this. And so I had to grab a picture. Okay, I told the kids when we were done working on the station that day that we'd go get some lunch. So we walked down the street and got some pizza and burgers, salad, some drinks. So from left is David, and there's Daggy, Getu, and Sergey having lunch after a hard day at work at the club station. All right, one of the things the kids gave me, I've gotten several presents during my visits, was this Ethiopia shirt. So I wore it to a PVRC club meeting at NR4Ms, and here's a picture of me and my good buddy Bill K1SE. But I brought that shirt down to the club meeting and wore it, and they were wondering at first what the heck that was about until I explained it was a gift from the kids in Ethiopia at the club station. And I was also given one of the nice Ethiopian Amateur Radio Society T-shirts. And here's my picture with Dula. And I'll speak a little bit more about her in a little bit. She's a very interesting girl. Okay, so we get to the contest. Contest started at 3 p.m. on Saturday afternoon. I arrived Friday night, but since we had done most of the setup in May, wasn't too concerned about it. Figured we could get everything ready to go before the contest. So the next morning I got up and headed over to the station, and one of the things I brought along was a butternut vertical HF2V that I've had laying around here for years. I've used it off and on, but probably for the last 10 years or more. It's sat in the garage, and I thought, you know, they really don't have much in the way of a 40-80 meter antenna at the club station, so I packed that up and brought it with me. And the idea was to put it up before the contest. So we could use it that night. So here you see Sergey and Daggy working on the antenna, and if you'll notice, Daggy's got her hat on and a couple layers of clothes. It actually gets rather chilly there in Ethiopia, especially this time of the year. And when I was there a couple of nights ago, I was standing out front of the hotel one night, and I could actually see my breath. It was that cool or that cold at night. So here's another picture. I'm helping them with the antenna a little bit. And again, you know, one of the biggest challenges with this sort of thing is to resist the urge to jump in or to do things, because it's instinctive for me. I've done it a million times. I know it has to be done. And what I really want to do is give them the antenna or the mod for the amplifier and the instructions and say, okay, here, you do it. If you have any questions, give me a call, and I'll just kind of keep an eye on them. And if it looks like they're wandering too far off, then I'll say something. But you know, operating too, it's the biggest thing. Is there's always this urge to hop in and do something or help them. And I think it's just, you know, good for them if they just kind of go off on their own and learn. And so that's I try to do that, and I think we've done pretty well. Okay, so the antenna was put up. I came back outside, and the thing was laying down, and I thought, that's not good. And what happened is we had a concrete block that it was tied to, and something didn't hold up, and the antenna fell over while I had gone inside to get some tools. And so we stood it back up, and it was a little bent up on top, but, you know, who cares? As long as it works, that was the main thing. But I had to take a picture of the top of that antenna, and those wires coming off it are a top hat loading that we put on it to broaden out the bandwidth on primarily 80 meters. 40 meters it works fine without it, but it broadened things out on 80 a little bit. One of the things which really helped is that there is a large metal roof where we put this vertical. I mean, you couldn't ask for a better ground system. So we just tied it into that, and away we went. However, I had a heck of a time getting this thing to tune on 80 meters, and after an hour or two, well, the contest was coming, so I said, you know what, let's go ahead and get started with the contest. We've still got some hours before it gets dark. I'll come back outside and work on this thing once I get them going with the contest. But I had put this thing together and tested it out at home before I left, and everything worked fine, and I could not get this thing to tune on 80. I did recall that with the butternut verticals, there's that coil that goes across the feed point. I've never used it at home here, but I was reading the instruction manual. It said something about, well, if you've got a really good ground system, you may need that in order for the antenna to tune properly. So I thought, okay, great, but I don't have that inductor with me. I don't have the dimensions for it. I remember kind of the size of it, so I found a piece of wire, and I used a fluorescent bulb tube because the diameter looked about right, and I wound this inductor. I thought, well, let's give it a shot. So I put it across the feed point. Bingo! I mean, that thing loaded right up, and we were in business. So I don't know. I'm not exactly sure why, but it took care of whatever matching problem we were having, and we were all set. Okay, here is a look at the other antennas at the club station. That is a big high-gain RLP, rotatable log periodic, covers 6 to 30 megahertz. It does work on 40, and that came from the old U.S. Embassy a couple of years ago. The new embassy was built, and this was donated to the club, as I understand, along with the big rotator. So they've got a fairly substantial HF antenna there, and also a couple of to the left EME antennas which aren't being used, and kind of lost in all of this here is a 6-meter beam, but I don't think they're active on 6 either. And then here's the another shot of the butternut vertical. Okay, this picture was a little bit blurry, but like I said, we were out working on the antenna, and I thought, geez, the contest starts in an hour. We need to get write logs set up and get everything going inside. So I came back in and we set up the computer. We used the sound card for a voice cue, which they thought was really cool. And since we were a multi-op, each person logged in with their call sign and recorded their own CQ message. And those sorts of things they really got a kick out of. But they just thought it was kind of neat to have computer control the radio and to be able to record your voice calling CQ. So we set that all up in the hour leading up to the contest. And then what I did is I started off the contest just so they got an idea of how things worked. And maybe after a half hour or so, one of them took over. Then I went back outside to work on the antenna. So here is Daggy, one of the young young ladies there operating. She's actually a pretty good operator too. They all are, for that matter. They have varying degrees of capabilities, but they all do pretty well. And here's a doula, and you probably saw this picture or a version of it in some of the recent contest newsletters, and Bernie W3UR's House DX. From left is Hailey or Sergey, a doula, and then of course myself. A doula is kind of an interesting girl. The first time I went to the club station, which was several months before Sid's passing, I had actually been through Ethiopia several times and just didn't get over to the club station because typically you get in late at night, maybe get to the hotel 10 o'clock, and the next morning you have to be up and out at the airport for a connecting flight. And I just didn't bother to go over to the club station. But finally, on one of my trips, the second or third time, I said, I got to get over and see Sid in the station. But anyways, I came over, I visited the station, and at one point Sid said, well, go ahead and turn on the radio. Why don't you do some operating? I thought, well, okay, fine. And the kids told me, you know, Ken, conditions haven't been very good. I don't know that you're going to work much, but go ahead and try it. So I guess I was maybe on 15 meters. And they were right. I wasn't getting a lot of takers. But eventually started picking up a little bit, and pretty soon I had a big pileup of Europeans. And they were listening to me, and they thought, wow, what's he doing? And so they started coming over and watching, and so finally I told one of them, I think it was Getu, I said, hey, listen, why don't you sit down and operate? Because, you know, I'd sensed they really hadn't had a chance to work too many pileups. So they did. They took over, and they did a great job of handling it, and again, big smiles on their face. And to me, that was much more fun watching them operate the pileups and the enjoyment they were getting out of it. But I took much more fun out of that than sitting there myself and doing it. But at one point, a doula got on. So I'm going to watch this. And she was fantastic. I mean, she's a very proficient operator and just did a very good job of handling the pileup and everything. And I thought, well, hey, that's pretty cool. Well, some months later, she left the university and enrolled in the maintenance program for Ethiopian Airlines. Ethiopian Airlines, as I said, is you know, big major carrier in Africa, and they've got quite an operation going there in Addis Ababa. So she enrolled in their maintenance program, and is just having the greatest time with that, which is fantastic. I mean, I'm happy for her. And so when this contest rolled around, I said, no, we really need to get a hold of her, bring her back to the university, and have her be a part of our team. And she said, well, I'll see. I'll think about it. I'd like to do it. And so she came over Sunday morning, and you know, I talked to her for a while, and eventually I said, hey, come on, let's sit down and operate. So she took over and just did a very good job, was having a lot of fun. And about an hour went by, and we were nearing the end of the contest, and someone else wanted to close things out. You know, we're trying to split up the time a little bit. So I told her, well, come on, let's let Getu finish. But she said later on, you know, I forgot how much fun this is, and what a good time I have with everyone here in the radio, and that was great to hear. I mean, I love to hear that you know, she had been away from it for a while since she was no longer attending the university. She didn't have access to the station, and she had a chance to get back on the air and just had a blast with it. So that I was really glad that I made an effort to get her to come over, and as she actually did, and had a chance to join us. Okay, one of the things I told the kids is, okay, you know, with the contest, there's the competition and everything, but it's also the camaraderie, getting together with your friends, and you got to have junk food and drinks and that sort of thing. So once things got rolling, I gave someone some money. I said, you know, go to the restaurant next door and get some pizzas, burgers, or whatever, and bring them back here. And because we really hadn't eaten that day yet. So here's Getu chowing down on a big old burger. Okay, how did we do? Here's a look at our breakdown. No CW contacts. I thought about getting on CW, but then again, this was really about the kids operating, and as long as they were interested in operating, or there was someone that was willing to take over in the chair, I thought I'm not going to jump in, and I won't bother with CW. 15 meters was obviously our big band. 10 meters was not so good the first day. It opened the second day. But the problem we have is there's a high SWR on that RLP on a number of bands, and I'll get to that in a second. So we couldn't run the amplifier on 10 meters. The you know, we had a real hard time working people on 10 and just getting on barefoot with marginal conditions. So I think if we'd had the amplifier, we could have done a lot more the second day. We might have even been able to run stations. Nothing on 40 and 80. I was a little bit surprised by that. What happened on Saturday night around 7:30 is the guards told us, listen, we're closing the doors to the embassy. To the university. You either have to leave now or you will be inside for the rest of the night. Well, Getu and a couple others had their sleeping bags, and they were fully prepared to spend the night. I thought about it. I kind of wanted to stay just to keep things going, and I was curious to see what we could work on 40 and 80. But at the same time, I had just arrived the night before. I was tired. You know, the thought of my hotel bed and a nice shower and everything, and I just said, yeah, you know what, you guys man the ship for tonight. I'll be back tomorrow morning. And for whatever reason, I don't know if they didn't hear anyone or what, or maybe they fell asleep, but we didn't work anyone on 40 and 80, and that's too bad because it would have been some extra cues, some extra multipliers to help the bottom line. But nevertheless, 700 almost, well, 749 cues. That is, I would have to say, probably the most contacts that they have ever made in a 24-hour period. When I brought up the idea of doing the contest, they all said, oh, yeah, that's a great idea, and we're going to win. Well, I had to recalibrate their expectations a little bit, especially with IARU. It's just kind of a different beast, and competing against the big headquarters stations in Europe, we didn't stand a chance. And so I explained that to them, and also the advantages, geographical advantages of being in Europe, vice East Africa. And so I think they understood it. We were very happy with what we did. It was the first contest operation, and everyone vowed that, hey, this is a good starting point. We'll do better next time. But again, you know, almost 750 contacts in a 24-hour period far exceeded anything they had ever done before by themselves. So it was a great accomplishment. They did a good job. Okay, here's one of the unsung heroes, and I think he's joined us tonight, of ET3AA, and that's the QSL manager, Bob, N200. Bob has taken over the QSL duties, which has been a big help because, you know, the cards going direct gets a little bit tough for the kids to answer them all the time. And this way we've got a known, reliable QSL manager. And unfortunately, we've had a little problem with the logs, stuff prior to Sid's passing. We've gathered what we could as far as the paper logs go. And if you go to Bob's listing on QRZ.com, I think there's a chart there that tells you what periods that he has the logs for. But everything going forward for the last, I think, 2 years from ET3AA is covered, so we should be fine, or at least the last year. And Bob's very easy to motivate. Every time I come back, I send him a couple bags of coffee. Ethiopia is big for their coffee, and Bob likes coffee, so I'll send him the logs, and I'll send him some coffee, and he's pretty well set. So anyways, thanks, Bob. I believe you're on here. Thanks for all your hard work and keeping that end of the station in good order. Okay, so what's next for the club? Quickly, we are working on individual licenses for each of the students. The kids have been working on this with the authorities. Some headway is being made. At times things look positive, and this last week they just said, it's typical bureaucracy. Nothing's happening at the moment. So we're continuing to work on that. Got our fingers crossed. I think it would just be fantastic if they could each get their own call sign. Some of them are ready to put up stations at their house, which I just would be incredible. So I would love to see that happen. I think that would be really cool for them. Of course, keeping the club active and relevant with the students. I often see a lot of kids up there. I think it's become a little bit of a hangout place. I don't know how many of them are actually part of the club, but there's internet connection up there. It's kind of a cool place, I guess, for them to hang out, even if they don't operate the radio. So maybe that's one way of reeling some of them in. And the club leadership, right now they've got a very strong group thanks to Sid's mentorship, but eventually they're going to graduate and move on. Daggy has graduated. She still spent some time over there, but those kids will move on and get a job and start a family at some point, and so it's the challenge will be finding strong leaders and keeping things going over there. Mentors, I'm doing what I can. I've been very fortunate that my work has taken me through Ethiopia quite a bit this year, some last year, so I do what I can, and I know there's a couple other people that pass through there and try to keep things going. And then, of course, with any station, there's the maintenance piece. I was mentioning the highest WR on that RLP. I was investigating that, and just to cut to the chase, I had pulled one of the connectors off the coax inside, and I saw the shield was all black, and I thought, well, this coax probably isn't very good. It's contaminated. And I looked a little bit further, and I noticed the center conductor the diameter was kind of small, and I thought, son of a gun, I bet you this is 75 ohm coax. I haven't been able to verify that, but I think that's part of the problem is there's a 75 ohm piece of coax on a 50 ohm system. So this last trip I brought along a new roll of RG213, and as soon as they can get some scaffolding on the roof to reach the feed point on that RLP, they'll go ahead and replace that coax, and I think we'll be in a little bit better shape. Position indicator, the indicator's off. That needs to be fixed. It hasn't been a job I've tackled yet. I want to make sure if I do, I've got enough time. So right now, we know, okay, the 200 degrees means you're pointed towards Europe, 170 Japan. I don't want to make the situation worse and then have to leave. So I've got to make sure I've got enough time before we tackle that. And knock on wood, the equipment has been pretty reliable, so we haven't had any issues there. Again, here's another shot of some of the equipment. That's Sige holding a Kenwood 830, which was donated by Fred Lawn, K3ZO. One of the things the kids need in order to apply for a license is they have to have a radio. There has to be a radio assigned to that license. So we have 3 radios. We have 3 people applying for licenses, and one of them was using this 830 donated by Fred. And if these guys are successful in pulling this off, then we'll look at getting some of the other students going and getting them equipment as well. And we'll have to be a little bit careful here. We have to pick the ones that are active, that have demonstrated an ability to get on the air and that they're going to use it, that sort of thing. But there is a group that's anxious to get on with their own call signs and own stations if we can make that happen. I need to mention some supporters, at least since I've been involved in this. The Virginia DX Century Club was one of the first groups to step up. First time with a Heil headset, the foot switch, and the adapter to go with the Yaesu 450, and that was put into good use during the contest. They also donated a little bit of money to help with the QSL chores. And then Bill and Gordon, and unfortunately Gordon became a silent key here not too long ago, donated a radio. My parents, they were out here this spring, and I was talking to them about it, and they said, well, yeah, we'll cut you a check. Here's some money to help them out. So that was really cool. As I mentioned, Fred, K3ZO. Yasmi stepped up with a big-time donation, which we're hoping to put to use here if they can get the licenses. So we'll use some of that money to support that effort. There is my email address if anyone else is interested in supporting or becoming a part of this, or if you happen to be traveling and passing through, by all means, drop me an email. We'd be happy to have you on board. One other thing, and maybe this is a good point to mention it, Sergey, the one holding the 830, just approached me last week when I was there, and a couple of the guys, there's a lot of construction work going on in Ethiopia, new buildings, and they're kind of interested in trying to get some contracts to do the IT work in some of these buildings. And he was wondering if there was any distributors in the U.S. that they might become get involved with and become a distributor in Ethiopia so that they can get IT equipment and work on maybe bid on some contracts to do some of the cabling in some of these facilities. So I don't know if anyone on here tonight or that listens to this recording has any connections, but if you do, again, drop me an email, k4zw@verizon.net, and if there's some sort of partnership that could be set up with these kids, it'd be great, because a lot of them they're studying communications, taking their Cisco exams, and that is one area in the country where there is some opportunity, where there's building going on, and it needs IT infrastructure, and if they could get involved in that would be a big boost. Okay, a couple pictures, not a whole lot, just some sights from Ethiopia. This was, I think, probably during one of my first visits in 2011, a picture I took from the hotel, just basically an open yard. One thing I do want to point out, these blue cars, the old Russian Ladas, those are taxi cabs, and even Sid drove one. And I mean, they get you around. Sometimes when you're going up a hill, I swear I'm going to have to get out and push, but they are primarily what is used for taxi cabs over there. But anyways, this open lot next to the hotel turned into a football field, very popular in Africa, and they had a pickup game going out there. This I took just a couple of days ago from my window outside the Radisson Hotel. Typical street corner that you'll see, and they also have yellow taxi cabs. Ethiopia on the whole is a pretty poor country, but there is a lot of changes taking place. There's infrastructure upgrades, new roads, bridges. The Chinese are in there. Chinese are in a lot of places in Africa doing a lot of infrastructure work, and Ethiopia is no exception. And as I mentioned, a lot of buildings going up and that sort of thing. So there's some modernization going on, but overall, it's they have a lot of challenges. And this is a picture of a Boeing 767 Ethiopian Airlines, and I believe that tail registration is ETANU. So you may say big deal. Well, my youngest son, who lives in San Francisco, works for a company that leases aircraft, and one of their aircraft is leased to Ethiopian Airlines, and it's a 767. So he said, Dad, if you ever see ETANU, let me know. Well, one day we were boarding our flight, and I looked out the window, and I said, hey, look at that, there's this plane. So I snapped a picture of it, and then, as a matter of fact, this last trip, I was in Brussels waiting for a connection to Dakar, Senegal, and I saw an Ethiopian 767 taxiing, and looked out the window, and there it was again. So I'm just keeping an eye on it for him. Okay, this is from one of the lower-end hotels. If I'm there for work, I'll stay at the Radisson. If I'm there on my own dime, then it's usually something a little cheaper. But you'll see this in many places. Just a separate hot water tank in the shower. Nothing too unusual about it until you look close and you see the wiring coming out of it right next to the faucets and the water and everything. And I don't think GFI outlets have made it to Ethiopia yet, but I see that once in a while. It makes me a little bit nervous, so I try to stand away from it. But that's pretty much standard fare in a lot of these places. Okay, Bob N200, this picture's for you. There's the Tomoka Coffee Company. This one's actually in the Radisson Hotel. They have another one downtown, a little hole in the wall. It's really kind of a neat place. I didn't grab any pictures when I was there, but you see a lot of tourists going in, buying up bags of coffee, a lot of locals in there sipping their coffee and everything, but this is very convenient in the hotel. Okay, one other thing I said I was going to do was some tips for breaking pileups, and this is maybe some operating tips as well. Just some things I've picked up over the years operating, whether it's from ET3AA or Z81Z or wherever else I've been. And I think probably for a lot of you, you're going to say, yeah, okay, I knew that. Maybe it'll just reinforce things, or you know, if you're fairly new, maybe it'll be of some help. But the first thing is, you know, observe the operator's pattern. You know, what are they doing? How are they operating? Where are they working people? One thing I noticed during the contest is a lot of these kids, while they did well, they're still new and somewhat inexperienced. And some people, when they called, you could see that they saw that and that they, you know, were very slow and deliberate giving their call and report, and others were just, you know, bang, 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 like they were working someone like me that's been doing this for 30 years. And when you do that, I mean, it kind of frustrates the kids, and it takes longer to make the contact. So just be a little bit aware of the operator on the other end too, their skill and their speed, and try to match things. And for heaven's sakes, if it's a new operator, you know, give them give them a little bit of a break. And I remember some years ago, if it was like the first or second VP6 was a Ducey operation, where some of the locals went along, and some of the grumbling on the packet cluster and stuff about, oh, these guys aren't any good, blah, blah, blah. And I just thought, you know, what a terrible thing to say, because first off, it's their country. You know, the other operators are there as the guest, and you know, just slow down and give them a chance. I mean, this is their introductory to amateur radio. Don't blow it. Try to find when you're calling, trying to find a clear spot, and sometimes that's a relative thing. I tend to work most of the weak stations on the higher end of the pileup. Often there'll be situations where there's 2, 3, 4, 5 guys calling, all 20 over S9, but they're all beating each other's brains out, and I'll just go up a little bit, and there'll be someone maybe not even moving the S meter, and I can pick them out no problem at all. And the guy in one of the pictures earlier, Bill K1SE, is a master at that. He over the years has operated with wires in the townhouse. He's got a horizontal loop at his current QTH, and I typically don't have a problem working him. He knows where to get in there, when to call, and never by any stretch of the imagination allowed a signal. But he's a darn good operator, and you can find the right spot and get in and work me, and that's that. So keep that in mind. I say send your call cleanly. There are times where someone will call me and they're just sending and this is on CW, but it's very sloppy, and I've got to stop and think, okay, what is he sending? And then I got to get a correction, and in my mind I'm thinking, do I waste the minute or two it's going to take to work this guy, or do I just tune off him and try to find someone else? And I don't like doing that, but you know, I just really slows things down. So if you're sending, especially on CW, you know, make sure it's nice and crisp, that the guy can copy it, that the characters aren't run together, or you know, your B has 4 or 5 dits in it or something like that. And just send the basics. You know, I frankly, when I'm working a pileup, I don't need to know your name. I don't need to hear my call sign sent. If I came back to your call and I have it right, no need to send your call again 2 or 3 times. Just keep it very simple. This next one's obvious. Don't call if I didn't come back to you. But it happens all the time. People just keep calling. It slows things down. It drives me bonkers. Next one again, listen to instructions. I typically, my philosophy is when I'm operating, I'm going to work whoever I can hear. You know, sometimes wherever you are geographically, you have certain advantages to different parts of the world. You know, that's just kind of the way it works. So I'll work who I can hear. But then there are times too where I do want, say for example, Europe to stand by because, well, okay, I'm picking up some North American stations, and it is a bit of a difficult path for them. So give me a little bit of time and see if I can work some of them. And so, if you ask a particular geographic region to stand by, please listen. Some guys continue to call and call and call, and it's frustrating, number one, and number two, it's costing some people a contact because I can't hear the weaker stations, pull them out because this guy's so loud. You know what? I'll be honest with you. I will blacklist some people if their behavior warrants. Frankly, I just don't think it's that hard. Just listen to the instructions. Be a decent operator. It has to be something fairly bad before I'll do that. But I've done it in the past, and I don't write the call down or anything. It's in my head, and as long as it stays there, I'm probably not going to work you. And that may just be for the day or the hour or whatever. But darn it, it frustrates me when people act the way they do sometimes, and so I'm not going to work you. This next one, loud is good. There was one station, it's probably just as good. I don't remember the call or country it was from, somewhere in Europe. But the guy was like 5 S units louder than everyone else, and his signal was wide. I mean, he sounded like, a Voice of America broadcast station on shortwave, and I just thought, no way this guy's legit. I mean, he's running big power, broad signal, and I thought, buddy, I'm not going to bother working you. That's just not right. Unfortunately, he kept calling for a while. He was covering up a lot of people, but he went away, and that was that. So, just listen, play fair, play clean. I think that's all we ask. Make sure the DX station came back to you. I've had instances where I will come back to someone, I'll work them, and I'll hear two people reply and give me a signal report. Guess what? One of them is in the log, one of them isn't going to be, and they're going to be disappointed. If in doubt, work me again. That's my policy. Some of these people have online logs, check, but I don't mind working someone again if you're not sure. The big thing in this, I think it's lost sometimes, is the hunt is part of the fun. We've gotten these big high-profile de-expeditions are great. The guys do a fantastic job, give a lot of people a contact, but I think in some regards it's spoiled us a little bit too. So the smaller operations, or maybe the operators aren't quite as proficient as what you have on some of the bigger ones, and we tend to think, or if someone goes somewhere that we're owed a contact, well, that's not necessarily the case. Chasing the DX should be part of the fun as well. I've got someone that comes over here and hunts deer, and this last year he didn't get any, but I'll tell you what, he had a good time just sitting out there and watching them and watching all the other stuff running around, and I think to him that was probably just as much fun as actually if he had gotten a deer. So keep that in mind. That chasing DX should be fun, and you're not going to get them all the time. Okay, this is it. What I wanted to do is just put in a plug for the Worldwide Radio Operators Foundation. Go check their webpage. We renewed the contract for this webinar service last week, and certainly would welcome any support that anyone wants to give the organization. You can go to their webpage and find out how to do that. Yeah, I know they would welcome that, but we've renewed it for another year, so we're going to go ahead and continue this program. But if you have a few extra bucks you want to throw at them to help support it, I know they would welcome that. So let me go ahead and find the questions panel here, and go ahead and send in any questions you might have. I will take those, and then we'll go ahead and wrap it up. And first one, Mr. Red K0DQ, he said, Ken, what's the expat presence in Ethiopia like now? Any hams? There is a German physician, and he's Echo Tango 3, I think Bravo November. I'm not sure if he's living there anymore. He had been spotted earlier in the year. I wasn't even familiar with the call. I didn't know it existed. Then there was one other German, I think, that passed through Addis in the last month or two, and it paid a visit to the club station. But right now, other than ET3BN, if he's on, ET3AA is the only station that's active from Ethiopia. So obviously it's important we keep that station going, and if the kids could get their own licenses, get on the air, that would be even better. Okay, any other questions? Right. Dave, K3ZJ is wondering, what is the wire around roof perimeter that I see in your pictures? I guess I'll have to go by. I'm not, be honest with you, I'm not sure. Let me go back and take a look, Dave. I gotta collapse this. Yep. Just bear with me here. Let's see. I don't. This one here, I'm not sure. I know what you were seeing, Dave. I mean, that's the top hat on the vertical. If it's there, there's a grounding lightning system. Maybe that's what you saw. I'm not sure, but in any case, okay. Ross, KB8NTY, will there be an archive of this webcast? Yes, as a matter of fact, it is being recorded, and as is with all of our webinars, and it will be posted to the WWROF webpage under the webinar link for anyone that wants to watch this. Okay, any other questions? If not, we'll go ahead and wrap this up. Just give you a second here, but you know, I've been fortunate since I've been involved in ham radio to have gotten involved with some very good groups and some very good people. You know, I've done pretty well in contesting, had a lot of excitement there. Same thing with chasing DX. But I have to tell you, working with this group of young people in a country like Ethiopia and seeing the enjoyment they get, I mean, it just takes me back to when I was in high school, when I was in college, and seeing the enjoyment they get, to me, that's been every bit as good as winning CQ Worldwide or, you know, working a new one on 160 or something like that. It's they keep telling me, Ken, you know, thank you so much for your support. It means so much to us, and I'll tell them quite frankly. I mean, they're an inspiration to me too. It's amazing getting involved with this group, and I just hope. You know, I hope we can keep it going, you know, that the other kids coming up the ranks will get involved. Again, I'd love to see them get their own licenses because there's a lot of enthusiasm there, and I think it'd be great for them. And, you know, especially in the situation they're into, I've met a lot of people over the years that have helped me with my career and different things, and for them to have contacts and people in the amateur and the contesting, DXing community that they can reach out to certainly even benefits them more than just being on the radio, but, you know, from a personal and professional thing. So I hope they can reap some of those rewards as well. So, okay, it looks like that's it for the questions. Thanks for joining me. And again, my email address is out there. If anyone's passing through there, let me know. I'm sure the kids would love to see you, or if you'd like to support them in any way, drop me a note, and we'll see what we can do. So with that, thanks for joining us. Take care, 73s, and maybe we'll catch you on the air from ET3AA one of these times. So long. Bye-bye.